everyone. And I thought this would be appropriate for discussing Admiral Beatty this evening, as this is what I will be probably wearing. I will be wearing. I'm not sure if I can get away with the orange bow tie, as much as I enjoy it, next week, on next Thursday. But yes, I thought it rather appropriate that you should all have the chance to see me in this get-up, and there will be another chance. I will, of course, because I am that kind of person, going to do a proper display and a proper chat. But yes, here you go. I thought it was also appropriate for Beatty. I do have one small problem. Currently, I can't find any of my cufflinks. They're in a box somewhere around here, but I can't find which box they're in. So I will order some new ones before I go Thursday. I'm gonna have to keep using pieces of doweling, which I don't recommend, but do as interim cufflinks if you're ever getting measured for things. It's going to sound interesting, but I do actually notice from experience. I've been in shops where they have been measuring up and they've used pieces of doweling to hold the cufflinks straight and hold them in form, so that your cuffs are measured correctly. But yes, there you go. What do we think? How are we all doing? And tonight is, of course, very important to look dapper, because you have to remember, tonight we're discussing Admiral Beatty and his potential command of the Mediterranean. And the thing is, Admiral Beatty is, how do I put this? He's far more of a political admiral than he ever is a command admiral. So he's far more at home looking like this than I will ever be, and far better at looking like this than I will ever be. And he is very stylish at doing this. And this. So in my best Beatty, hello everyone. Welcome to Admiral Beatty in charge of the Mediterranean. And yes, we're going to be doing this discussion. You're hopefully going to enjoy it. It's an alternate history, but it's a really cool dive into what could have been and what might have been sensible to command. And yes, I am wearing an orange bow tie, because why wouldn't I be wearing iron brew? Back in a second. Actually, no, come back in a second. I'm going to take my jacket off now, but immediately you're going to see the cufflinks are not in my shirt. So actually, instead of wearing this the whole way through, I am going to quickly get rid of the shirt. Back in a second. In about 2 seconds, I will look like a tech bro. I look like it. I can pull off the tech bro look. I think it's not just Gareth who can pull it off. Of course, I could have just done this live on stream, but I think then I might have made YouTube censors very unhappy with me stripping on stream. It's tempting though. It's tempting to wind up YouTube, but it's never a good idea to wind up one of your primary income streams. It isn't. It's fun to do, but it's not something you should do. I have to admit this. Universities have tended to find up with me. I do like to wind people up. And we're back with Beatty and the Mediterranean. And just give me a small second to tuck my shirt in, so I don't flash you all anything you don't want to see. Because trust me, no one wants to see that. And yes, volume is very poor. I don't know why the volume is very poor. It really shouldn't be very poor. But perhaps that'll be better. Let's see. Audio is low. Well, put your phone up. That should hopefully improve things. If it doesn't, then I don't know what the problem is. Hello, camera. Yes, I'm here. You missed me coming back. You missed me. I'm back. Hello. How are we all doing? And I'm back in touch. Distance to mic was the issue. Yeah, that might have been a problem, because you see, I did have to quickly dive around and bending over, and this mic, it's not set up in its current form to be really an area mic. It's more set up to be a directional mic. So where I was stripping off and getting dressed, slightly behind it. But yes, cufflinks. Cufflinks are something which I am going to have to make sure I have. And hello everyone, and welcome to the first Thursday Live, back as a Thursday Live since pre-pneumonia. I hope you're all well and enjoying life. There's been a lot of fun going on. There's a lot of fun with this one. There certainly is a lot of fun going on with this one. And ooh, so tempting, so tempting. There are a lot of very cool novelty cufflinks, I've just realised. A lot of massively cool novelty cufflinks. And yeah. Not buying those. Not buying those. Definitely not buying those. We'll see. We'll have a look around and we'll try and figure out what they are. What if Admiral Beatty had lived another 2 decades? He was a retired man and there wouldn't have been much problem with it. But thank you very much for the super chat, Robert. So, an English gentleman without cufflinks is no longer English. That is possibly the case, but in the nicest way, I cannot find my cufflinks. They're in a box somewhere. Hello, everyone. So I always say hello. Hello, Bo Mill. You got here really early. Hello, James C. Stanley, Michael Cooch. I've answered John Michael's question. John Shea, Paul Amos, Carl McGaswick. Hello. Hello, Leslie. Hello, Runon. Hello, Jacob. Hello, Byron. Hello, Derek Magnus. Hello, DG40. Hello, Knight. Hello, Wayne. Hello, David Goulding. Hello, everyone. Stafford. Drakenred. Hello. Hello, everyone. Felix, hello. Chandlord, hello. Carl McGasberg, well, I think I said that, but I'll say it again. Hello, Trayman. Blackburn Maximus. Hello, everyone. How are we all doing? I hope you're enjoying and hope you're looking forward to this evening. This evening's question, of course, is Beatty of the Mediterranean. Now, here's the thing. This is actually a surprisingly fun topic, and one of my practice runs has turned into the recorded video, I must say. Because I always do, even if it's not live, I do a practice run, a couple of practice runs. And, yeah. It is an interesting time to put these things together. I have no idea if the sound is... I hope the sound is okay. Making sure the audio hasn't decided to go to... Yeah, it's on the right microphone. It sometimes gets fun. It sometimes does get fun. It sometimes decides it's going to reset to a different audio. But yeah, today's question, Beatty in the Mediterranean. And this started off a whole discussion in my mind of Beatty's career, when he would go to the Mediterranean. When is the natural point for him to deploy to the Mediterranean? Oh, Robert, yeah, he would have still been... The nicest way, this is not going to affect probably Jutland. But that's something we're going to talk about in a bit. We are going to get to that. We are going to get to the whole effect on potentially on Jutland. Right. Reach the next level of history. Suggested, unironically, to my wife to read Mahan, and that she would enjoy it. We were watching Max Miller. Not on topic, but I'm going to read that out because, oh my lord, man, you're brave. So suggesting Mahan to your significant other is always a big step. The audio was only off due to not sitting on my desk, yes. It wasn't too bad me standing behind my desk. I thought that would be loud enough and okay enough that it would be okay. So, let's consider Beatty's career. He's quite an active commander. He's quite an active officer. He has a fairly active career. He gets wounded in action. In fact, this is his career list, and it's long enough that I cannot really get it on a screen in large enough print that you can read it all in one. He does a lot of work. And that's a good thing. It means he has a lot of experience to draw from. He's what I would call an officer who's very good at one-on-one operations. He's very good at commanding a ship and leading a ship in battle. He's very good at leading a crew. He's also very good at the politics. You know, I wasn't joking when I was suggesting that he's more at home in this than I am. I really wasn't. Because he is. He's far more at home looking like this than I ever will be. He's far more at home looking swanky in a suit and a uniform and attending the right dinners. He could even pull off the tech bro. Look, I've got the cartoon shirt and the tuxedo. I'm full tech bro now. He could pull this off and do it well. He was a suave, dignified gentleman who was excellent at the political manoeuvring. And thanks to his wife and other sources, he was very, very wealthy for a naval officer. He was personally rich. He could afford to go on to half pay when he didn't want to do things. When you offered him jobs he didn't want to do, he could afford to go, nah, I don't want to do that. I'll toddle off now. I've got other better, more fun things to do. I will go hunting. I will go hang out with members of the House of Lords. I will go hang out with MPs. I will go hang out with major businessmen and industrialists, with foreign dignitaries. I will go hunting and shooting and gaming and soireeing with these people, and in return, they will come back to you and go, why are you not employing this wonderful officer? And when you go, well, we offered him a job, well, it obviously wasn't up to the caliber required for him. Obviously it wasn't. Because he's not doing it. So you should give us something more interesting, more challenging. This might also explain his chain of ships he commands, because let's be honest, as a captain, he gets to command Juno, Arrogant, Diana, Mars, Suffolk, Victory #1 at one point, and then gets made naval advisor to the council, and then gets HMS Queen, then was made naval secretary to the First Sea Lord, and then is put on to Aboukir, the 6th Cruiser Squadron, as Rear Admiral, then is naval secretary to the First Lord again, and then is given the command of Lion. Yes, Lion. He gets command of her on the 1st of March 1913. Oh. And so, yeah. Oh, by the way, if you're interested, and I have not been given the suit, but I have bought it, but for tuxedos, I went to Dobell on Amazon. I literally, because I didn't have the time to go anywhere else, I needed a new tuxedo because I got my tuxedo out and it had been ripped and damaged and I hadn't used it in years and it looked like it, so I needed a new one for next week. So I got Dobell on Amazon. I got the things put in and sent it for. And it looks really nice and it passed my mum's test. My mum was impressed by it. So basically the thing is, my theory is especially if you have someone in your family who likes to sew and make their own clothes, if something past their view of it being good enough, it's good enough. So it's a good one. They are, fun things to look at, fun things to have. And you always need a couple of decent suits in life. We know this because when we go to Japan, we're going to need a lot of decent suits. Well, was that Elon Musk for a second? Could I have his bank balance and such ships I would like to be built? Yeah. Yeah, it's sorted off Amazon. I typed in my size and took a punt at it, thought, well, I can return it if I don't like it. Came and, yeah, liked it. I just need to make sure I have some couplings for next week. But the point is, getting back to Beatty, he has all this career behind him. He has really good experience. The thing is, as I pointed out before, there is a very different skill to go from commanding one ship to commanding multiple ships. I've often pointed out, this is my own leadership experience, I've done leadership at several different levels of groups. I'm good at leading small teams or large organisations that I can divide up into small teams. So basically, if I can divide up the leadership into a small group of people and I can direct it through them, then it's fine. because I will have different people I can trust, because I find it difficult to trust lots of different people with doing duties and delegating it to large numbers of people, but I'm quite good at delegating to a small group I can trust if I trust them. So basically, the largest group I want to work with directly reporting to me is about 20 people, and I'll be fine. I have gone up to 60, and I've been okay, and especially in school organizations, those things. But that's in scenarios where I really do know what I'm doing, and it's kind of easy to predict what's going to come, and you can organize things within as much as you ever can when you're dealing with large numbers of children and large number of students and tutors. But the thing is that, in different organizations, I have found that the difficulty I have in organizing is when I'm about the middle level. Now, that's my skill set. And it's important to be aware from these, because you might be an excellent small group leader, but an absolutely terrible at dealing with the strategic level, and awful at levels above small groups. And that's fine. That is fine. It is fine to be not good at these things. Thank you, Drakenrad. But you have to understand yourself about yourself and adjust accordingly. And there are ways for negotiating senior officers through this. If you've got someone who's going to be very good at the strategic command level, the political level, but they still need sea time to get to that level, you can work out where you base them. Ideally, someone like Beatty probably should have been in the South Atlantic. He should have been somewhere, in a small, where he's going to have a small force to command, but he can get lots of sea time. And then you can bring him back, and you can give him the various postings at the Admiralty, and then send him out again to similar posts. And therefore he does quite well. But it suits him. What doesn't suit him is the kind of organisation like you've got in the Ground Fleet, where he's got to report up and organise down, and he's in the middle. Now, again, I've done that, and I know how good I was and how bad I was in that. The bad tendency is I have a tendency to deal with problems and then tell people in charge of me I've already dealt with them, and tell them how I've dealt with them. Which is not good it's okay in a scenario where people are not getting shot at. But in a scenario where people could get shot at if they're in the wrong place at the wrong time and you haven't told people, could be really problematic. So you don't have to be realistic for yourself enough to go, okay, do I have to detail someone on my team to constantly be telling the people above what I'm doing even when I forget about it? Probably do, but that's a level of self-awareness you need to have. And Beatty doesn't have that self-awareness. But here's the thing. Let's consider Beatty's capabilities as a personality. He's strong in one-on-one command. He's decisive, he's aggressive, he's going to hunt his enemy to the nth degree if he gets a chance, and he is very good at ignoring instructions from those above him if he thinks it can lead him to glory, which he will then turn with his political clout into armour against those people above him who are annoyed with him. If I'm not mistaken, that could actually be just what the pursuit of Goban and Breslau needs. There is a very real scenario here as we talk through, and I came to this when I was going through it, that actually, if Beatty had been involved in this, our perception of him could be very different. Because he would have had a battle which would have been undoubtedly played completely to his strengths. To his abilities. That's a shocking and scary thing, isn't it? To think that. And again, that goes back to, as I've talked before, about Nelson or Collingwood. If I want someone to be in charge of the peacetime navy of deterrence, I want Collingwood. He's far better at managing deterrence than Nelson ever will be. Nelson is a wonderful war machine. He's brilliant at fighting wars. He's terrible at administration, and he's atrocious at the deterrence because he just goes straight in for the kill. He doesn't do the escalation. Collingwood is great at the escalation. Collingwood's great at the peacetime deterrence, at the job the navies do 90% of the time when they're not fighting wars. Well, Sturdy doesn't do bad in the Falklands, does he? But there again, it's very difficult to do bad in the Battle of Falklands. You have 2 battlecruisers. The enemy doesn't have anything. So let's consider the Mediterranean scenario. You have Admiral Sir Berkeley Mill, who is a fine officer, a truly fine officer, and he is. But he's also the kind of officer who you put in a situation where you want to exercise a lot of control from home. He's going to always, whenever you give him latitude, he's going to lead into the conservative side of that latitude rather than the aggressive side of that latitude. He is always going to go for the safe option. He's who you put in charge of forces you want to preserve, you don't really want to use unless you have to, and who you want to absolutely be sure will not do anything without your say-so. There is a problem with this. Under the pursuit of Goban, he gets many, many different messages, which confuse the poor old boy. 2, those messages give him enough latitude that every single time he can choose the option you might not have wanted him to choose, but also that you might have wanted him to choose, because, let's be honest, I don't really trust Churchill and all those giving him messages to actually know what they're talking about, because they seem to keep getting confused where Goban and Breslau are going, and there are multiple people trying to give orders. It's a command structure which I've talked about before when I talked about the whole Battenberg scenario versus Fisher, that Battenberg, frankly, the Admiralty is disintegrating a bit, thanks to both Churchill's meddling and Battenberg having to deal with the fact that his whole staff is fighting for who should take over from him, not fighting for him. We're between the two different factions. Yes, Milne is perfect for leading a squadron in the Grand Fleet. Milne will do exactly what Jellicoe said when Jellicoe said it, no later, no sooner, no later, exactly. He's perfect. You need officers like this. So please, one of the problems that comes up in naval history when people are discussing it is people, sometimes it's assumed you want all your officers to be hard-charging, aggressive officers like Nelson. No. That's not what you need. Sometimes you need the personality for the situation you're in, and you need a mixture of officers. And you need to understand what mixture of officers you've got. Fisher had actually been really worried about Milne being in charge in the Mediterranean because he didn't think he was sufficiently aggressive enough to deal with any opportunities which come up. And Fisher had actually been arguing with Churchill over this. Please note, this is Churchill arguing with Fisher over the appointment of Milne, not Churchill arguing with Battenberg, who's his first Sea Lord. Because he keeps ignoring his first Sea Lord because he'd rather go have an argument with Fisher, who understands him and treats him like he's actually got knowledge and could be a peer, whereas Battenberg treats him like a politician. One he's not particularly impressed with all the time. But he will follow his orders because that's what he's supposed to do. Now, the thing is, the really fun bit of history here is that it actually makes sense to send Lyon out to the Mediterranean. It makes sense because of some of the issues which Milne is having with his fleet out there, which is dependent upon 3 older battlecruisers, I-class. And it's dependent upon, the issues they're having, but Lyon going out there, Beatty going out there actually makes a lot of sense because it's reinforceable. Vandenberg should change his name to Victoria Sponge. There are lots of things. But no. So, we all are keeping up with the live as it goes. Any questions? Because I know I normally am, these days in the premieres, you're used to me sitting in the chat answering questions as we go. So I want to answer questions, sort of stop every couple of slides occasionally and ask if there's any questions. And for those who don't want to listen to this, jump forward about a minute or so, possibly. We'll see if we're getting any questions. Relevant to the topic, though. I'm just saying that because I realise Knight has hundreds of questions he's trying to get through, but they are brew ships ones. Hello, Dan. Hope you've got your tuxedo out and all sorted out. You need to have your tuxedo ready. It's fun with tuxedos. It is a lot of fun with tuxedos. I'm not sure if I can get away with the orange bow tie next week. I'll probably have to go with a black bow tie. but it's tempting to go with the orange one. It's very tempting. Is it time for the Shames book luck yet? I've delayed that by a couple of slides today. Black Moses, deeply unfortunate thing. Beatty and Chatfield being killed by that one hit by Goban with everyone else getting only superficial wounds. Do you want to boot the bot up to passively collect them during? We could do that. If people would like me to, I will boot the bot up. I will turn the bot on. And now if you put I question, it should come through into the Discord. Garage on type, but put your black in your pocket when you get complaints. Oh, don't worry. I have other methods of dealing with complaints. I have dealt with complaints on many, many times. Oh. I have, yeah, had fun with those for a lot of times over the years. And questions should be now open for that. I will make sure I have a... Copy that. And stick that in there. And, yeah. Should be working now. Huh. Honestly, the next thing we have to test after we've got the bot all happy with the bot, this is for the Historiathon coming up, is going to be, of course, the checking the multicast and checking we can do that and checking that all works. So much fun to come. So much fun to come. So, question. So how many of the ships the RM built model on were Beatty's idea? None. Not a single one. Beatty never had anything to do with design and construction until post-World War I, when he was first Sea Lord. So, the first point that will usually come up when I start talking about this as an alternate history is someone would go, but what about the German battlecruiser strength? They couldn't take Lion out of the North Sea because, you know, what about their strength? Well, that was actually an interesting thing to work through. The Germans, in 1914, have von der Tann, Moltke, Seydlitz, Derfflinger and Goeben in their strength. Derfflinger is commissioned in September 1914. And as you will know if you watch this channel and any other channel about the Germans, whereas the British do all the testing and hold the testings out the way before they commission a ship, the Germans, they commission a ship and then they complete the testing. Now this is important because for the Germans it means they get to claim their in-service quicker. But it also means that they have to pay for any of the results of those tests after it's been commissioned that go wrong. The Royal Navy prefers to not commission the ship, i.e. take full delivery of it from the people they've bought the ship from, until they've completed all the tests. So therefore, anything which still needs to be fixed is on their dime, not the Royal Navy's. It's fun. So, they commissioned that in September 1914. Okay? So that means practically it actually doesn't come into service till November 1914. November, December. About the same time that Tiger is sort of worked up and in service. So, and she's commissioned technically October 1914, and there's Queen Elizabeth coming to service in December 1914. So, honestly, for the Royal Navy, the Germans have got battle cruisers, yes, rather than battle cruisers. And it's worthwhile to mention that through. There's a reason I've differentiated between the two. But the fact is that the Royal Navy, even without Lion, would have 4 to ships to 3, and would soon have at least 5 to 4, and could have Australia coming back. So they have options here. They do theoretically have options. Now, what I would add to that, is that you do have to consider the realities. Now, often when I start talking about battlecruisers, fast battleships, and battleships, people presume fast it is literally battlecruisers and fast battleships. But as I've explained before, battlecruisers as the economic warfare scouting vessels, the original ones, are split into 2 words. That's how it's originally spelled. And that sums up the Invincible class and the Indefatigables. They are economic warfare specialists. Now, the German vessels, which were always far more orientated towards being second-line battleships as well, because, let's be honest, they needed to be, because of the situation the Germans were in, especially with the fact that they couldn't get out without fighting their way past the British in a naval race, if it came to a war. Are usually closer to battlecruiser one-words, which are the far more interesting scenarios in terms of they are closer on that line. And often the discussion people get is they are trying to differentiate between, they presume all battlecruisers are one group or the other group of those. They're not. It's like the Lexington class are battlecruiser 2 words. They are. That's how they're designed. And you can tell this design along this spectrum by the subdivision and by the coverage. Now, if I give you an example, this is an example I've actually done in the recorded video as well, but I'm going to include it in live because I think it should be in both. So basically, consider a battle cruiser, as in the 2-word one, as you've got a shield and a helmet. That's your protection. That's your armor. That's what you have. And then a battle cruiser, 1 word, might have a breastplate as well and maybe a bit of leg covering. A fast battleship will have something on the back, something on the arms. They will have covering pretty much most places. But not quite getting the full plate armor. That is what a battleship has. A battleship is full plate armor. So the thing is, my shield, as a battle cruiser, 2 words, will probably be the same thickness and weight, and the same weight as all the other shields along that line. But it doesn't cover as much. So when someone comes back to me and goes, well, look at the thickness of their armor, I go, how much of their body, of their hull does it cover? What's the coverage? And what's the subdivision behind it? How much of the hull is subdivided up? How many of its, how many, what are they called? Brains just died. Oh. No, bulkheads. How many bulkheads are there? How many systems are there stopping the water spreading about? Because that's an important thing. That's an important part of whether or not this ship is a battle cruiser, a battle cruiser, a fast battleship, or a battleship. That's how we can decide. So this is also one of the reasons why you end up into into what I consider sometimes very silly debates, because everyone's focusing on they have this thickness of armor, not on the stuff behind it. What's on the Princess Royal in the Caribbean in 1914? She's sort of wandering around. She's not quite in there in 1914. At that point in 1914, this is what we're talking July, August 1914. She goes over there later when they're worried about the idea of von Spee breaking through. So that's later on. She's on call to the home fleet. Basically, I added Queen Elizabeth list, because it's the thing is, people often worry about the number of battlecruisers because they go, well, you know, if the Germans have them, they have a speed advantage over the Royal Navy, and they can in some way use that advantage to turn the Royal Navy, to cover their tea, to attack, to cause the Ground Fleet to be in trouble. And basically the point is, there is enough battlecruisers, especially in this period when the battlecruiser fleet is not a separate fleet. It's very much being operated as part of the Grand Fleet. There's not enough advantage for the Germans to be able to do that. They aren't able to go, yes, we can turn you... No, there's enough ships to block them and stop them doing it. So, right then, this leaves us with, there are roughly going to be 3 options covered, but there's 2 options. Have fun, police. There are 2 options we're going to mainly talking about. The options for what happens, therefore, if Beatty is deployed, is Milne keeps everyone together, or Milne splits up, and he sends Beatty in charge of what was historically Trowbridge's force. Now that's an interesting one. He does have a precedence for doing that, and at the beginning of this operation, you have to remember Captain Kennedy comes in contact, and... no, Captain Andrews, not Captain Kennedy. Captain Kennedy is a different one. And that's Ludovic Kennedy's dad later on in a different scenario. But Captain Andrews, in charge of Indomitable, and one of the other battlecruisers, actually does shadow Goeben and Breslau for a while, but because Britain hasn't declared war, they don't do anything. Now again, imagine what Beatty might have done in that situation. Beatty might have had fun in that situation. But probably wouldn't have done any more. Yeah, there's also the politics stuff with Dan, but we'll get into that in a bit of discussion. There's now debate over who Blackadder would have been. Blackadder would have been a 3rd Sea Lord, who constantly plans on becoming 1st Sea Lord, so he doesn't have to deal with the incompetents who are put above him. Constantly. Now, these are the options we're going to be exploring. But before we do that, we have to do what was already being asked for earlier, the shameless book plug! Yes, it is time for the shameless book plug. We do this in every single video because I'm an academic, a British academic, and as someone put it so neatly, it's publish or perish. In the UK, it's sell books and get eyes on them, or perish. It's not even publish. It doesn't matter how many books you publish. What matters is how well they sell. And I always use this to say thank you, promote my book, because no one else is going to promote my book but me. And the other thing to do is to say thank you to all for your kindness and support. I've got more Calixes on the way. It's all thanks to you. I'm able to do all the stuff I'm doing because of you. Next week I'm going to this dinner with the Shipshape crew because you nominated myself and Drakenfell for awards. Now, admittedly, we're against each other in the same category, and my book didn't make it into the book category, which I'm sad about, but we will. I'm having seen that Norman Freeman and a few others are in there, I am not surprised, and yes, I am very far down the totem pole to be on that awards list. But the thing is, I'm getting to go for the social media award. I don't expect to win it. It will be if I do win, I will be completely unprepared because I will not have a speech or anything prepared because I really don't think I'm going to win it. But thank you very much, everyone, for nominating me, and thank you very much for your kindness. And thank you for nominating Drac. And we're going to be having fun. It's going to be an interesting evening. Expect myself, Dan Freeman, and Boom Boom Dan to be sending out videos, etc. and other things while we're there in the evening. And as said, there is going to be a premiere. It's going to be a premiere which, for once, I will not be chatting to. But what I am tempted to say and do is I will... I'm not sure if I can get the bot to leave the bot running, because I would have to leave the computer running. And I won't be at home, won't be down here, so I can't really do that. I was tempted to try and leave the bot running to store questions for later so I can come back to them and answer them in the next bot brew ships. But I'll try and see if we can't figure out something. And it's going to be fun. But thank you all for your nominations. Thank you all for your support. And yeah, I wouldn't be doing any of this without you. Seriously, I wouldn't be able to keep the channel going. I wouldn't be able to do all the history I'm doing. I wouldn't be able to do all the research I'm doing if it wasn't for your support. Honestly, Robert Dennett, you're not far off. You really are not far off with that one. Why did the Royal Navy fail to catch the Go during World War I? Because while they were busy ruling waves, the Go was busy waving the rules. Not quite, although there are so many conspiracy theories. And this is something important to get into before we sort of... I will talk about the historical dispute, but... when I give you a rough rundown of the timeline, you're going to listen to that and you're going to go, that's a mess. And it is a mess. And if you go and do some search, you can find all sorts of myths and all sorts of conspiracy theories about what are allowing the Goeben and Breslau to escape, and all sorts of people paid off. No. It very simply comes down to two things. One, the Admiralty is a sodding mess at this point, as I've discussed when I did the Battenberg versus Fisher video. If Battenberg's actually let to run it. And the other point... the other really important point is the ships which are actually in the Mediterranean. Because there is a key point here to think about. The Goeben could do 25.5 knots. The Breslau 27.5 knots. If they're working fine. They're not working fine. They are both damaged. But they're both able to go quite fast. Still. The Indefatigables and Invincible class vessels in the Mediterranean, the battlecruisers, can do 25 knots. The armoured cruisers out there can do 23 knots. So not only are you giving them the commands which are putting them in the wrong place and getting them distracted, and that they have commanders who are going to edge on the side of caution and protection anyway, but you are also giving them vessels which can't catch up and make the difference when the time goes. Now, this sounds absolutely stupid, and it is. It's when I started looking through the list and working on this and actually thinking this through, and thinking this from the point of view of deploying Beatty, I was sitting there going, actually, a vessel like Lion should have been deployed down there anyway. They should have had one of these ships. It didn't need to be Lion. It could have been Queen Mary. It could have been any of the big cats. Any of these larger battle cruisers. Should have been, one of them should have been down there in the Mediterranean fleet to act as an enforcer. It's absolutely absurd there wasn't one down there. Once you start to work it through. So saying that, the pursuit of the Goeben. Now, here's the thing. They get notified on the 3rd of August that they are at war with Germany, that Germany is at war with France. And so Goeben and Breslau go and bombard Bona and Philippeville in Algeria on the 4th of August at 0600 hours. At 10:30 hours, it was Captain Kennedy. Captain Kennedy intercepted the Germans with a couple of with his with a couple of battle cruisers. The thing is, Kennedy is not an admiral, as some sources then write. He's a captain at that point. He's a captain in charge of Indomitable. He's the senior captain there, but he's a captain. And he can't do anything. Because the British haven't declared war. It's at this point that Wilhelm telegraphs Athens that German ships at present Mediterranean are about to unite. Now this is interesting because one of the factors in British decision making is when I say this, there was a telegraph from Wilhelm and a signal from Wilhelm to Suschau, the German commander, telling him that in the event of war he was to attack the French, attack the Allies, and then break out for the Atlantic to try and get home. Okay? He's to try and get home. Now, I believe fervently that the Allies got a copy of that information, but they didn't get a copy of the second telegram. The second message came from Von Paul and Tirpitz, who told Suschau instead to make a break for Constantinople. So immediately you've had Wilhelm giving one order, which the British, I think, heard about, so the British are watching for that one and prepared for that one and obsessed with that option, that scenario, and they're doing something else. Now, this is going to be a problem, because at a certain point the Royal Navy lose track of the German ships. Pretty much, it's by about midday. They've lost track of them in the haze and various other things. At 07:45 hours, Goeben arrived at Breslau and found Messina. Arrives at Messina and finds Breslau waiting for it. At that point, Suschau signals Athens, asking for coal, and the Greek premier is awoken by the German ambassador to request coal for the German ships. The German collier, the Bogoros, loads coal and is released by the Greek premier to go and do so. Nicest way, if that Greek premier had realised that those ships were going to Constantinople to reinforce the Turks, the Ottomans, he would never have done it. Honestly, that sours Greek relationships with the Germans for years. And before you think this is something I'm overtelling you, I've actually been in an event at the American Embassy, and I was between the Greek naval attaché and the German naval attaché, and the Greek naval attaché actually said this at one point: you can never trust the Germans. Remember how they lied about who the coal was for. What the coal was for. And I went, what? And I was sort of mentally going through my head and going, the only incident I can remember of coal involving Greece and Germany is Goeben being refueled. I went, you talking about 1914? Yes. You have long memories. Very nice guy. Very, very nice guy. But I think they were the attachés. They were a Greek and a German officer who were at the event. I think they were attachés. They were up that, or it was a NATO thing and they were over for that. I have no idea, really. Honestly, at that point, I was 4 hours into socialising. Of course, I'm on soft drinks, but I'm dyslexic, and by that time, honestly, people's name. The only thing I remember are people's faces. Their names start to become a hazy reference point. As anyone who's ever been at those sort of events will tell you, it starts off, the first hour is, oh, don't we look good? We're all in our tuxedos or uniforms, and everyone's in. There are some beautiful dresses around you, and everyone looks smart and spiffy, and by the time it's hour 2, lots of you are going, oh, good lord, my shoes hurt, and When is there proper food coming out? This is just nibbles which keep going round and round and round. I swear I've seen the same tray of Olivants 3 times. By hour 3, you're starting to develop a really extreme hatred for the waiter who keeps going away from it, who has the mini burgers and never reaches you. There are mini burgers that are literally sliders keep going through the room and they never reach your section of the room, and you're going, I cannot, if I move they'll go to the other section of the room I was in, so I can't move, but they keep going past me in those sliders, and they're the first proper food I've seen all in the last 2.5 hours. And then by hour 4 it's a case of, when is this going to end? When? Those sliders were too long ago. I want to go out and find a McDonald's. Anyway. Oh, it's fun. So yeah, they fill up with, they get some coal thanks to the Greeks. And then on the 7th at 03:45 hours, Trowbridge, who has been sitting outside sort of waiting for the Germans, fails to intercept them. Now, he spots them, he tries to engage them, but he can't keep up with them. And his ships can only do 23 knots, so the Germans can get away. And he's not really got the squadron to do the fighting. We've talked about this before. It's not really great chances. He can, in theory, do it. In theory, he could charge harder and he could push in, but there's only so hard he can push the ships the age he's got, and they are triple expansion engines, not turbine engines. And the thing about triple expansion engines versus turbine engines is they actually have a harder full stop on how much power you can get out of them than turbines. Turbines, if you're prepared to wreck the boilers, you can push a lot harder than a triple expansion engine. But a triple expansion engine tends to be less, how do I put this, particular. Come on, so I'm the only sober person here when clothing windows. Usually that's by about 30 minutes in Carl van Gausberg. I'm the only sober person left in the room, barring the waiters. By about 3 hours in, I'm the only sober person in there, including the waiters. By 4 hours in, I am very tempted to go and see if I can sneak my camera in to get blackmail photographs. Honestly, Robert Danner, if there are any Royal Australian Navy ships in the area, they would be charging straight towards it. But the thing is, they would have to be in the right position. Now, if we consider at this point, the British light cruiser manages to catch up with Goeben and intercepts Goeben signalling to Constantinople. At which point the Greeks inform their admiral Kondotouris that Goeben may try to enter the Dardanelles, but he's not at war with the Germans, so he doesn't know what to do. On Friday the 7th at 1800 hours, they pass Cape Matapan, and it's at this point that Mark Kerr, who's head of the British Naval mission in Athens, informs the Russian minister Demidov that Goeben are steering northeast for there. And then all sorts of signals start to come through. Mill doesn't leave Malta with his battle cruisers, and please note there are battle cruisers as in battle cruisers, 2 words, and he's only got 2 of them with him because Indomitable he sent off to Cole at 0100 hours on Saturday the 8th. So by that time, they've already passed Cape Matapan. So they've passed here and off there, and he's just leaving down here. And at that point, they start getting the signals all over again, from all over the place again. Goeben and Breslau are spotted in the Aegean on 0300 hours on the 8th. And then it's just signals, and different signals going backwards and forwards. It's a non-stop comms nightmare, with, on average, 2 urgent signals arriving every 30 minutes, it seems. by the point at which Goeben and Breslau arrive on the 10th of August in Constantinople, they arrive quite early in the day at Constantinople. Milne has only just passed Matapan in the dawn of the on midnight of the 9th, 10th, and literally at 00:00 hours he passes Matapan on the 10th. He's that far behind. There is no chance of him catching up. So here, the way you treat that sounds so terrible. No. I was thinking entirely of things like, I'd like a ship visit, please. Or, and this is more importantly, so, Admiral, when you were dancing that tango 20 years ago on top of a tabletop, yes, I have the picture to prove you did it. You know that thing. I'd like to go around your archives and do some research. Oh, I've got permission, thank you. But no, you never actually do that. Fun to think about. When you're the only one sober in the party, it is fun to think about. But you don't actually do it. Annoying. My own sense of morals blocking me again. So, as you can see, the pursuit has one potential incident. And that kind of gives us a bit of a clue. What are the immediate consequences if Milne keeps everyone together? What are the immediate consequences if Milne keeps everyone together? Oh, well, honestly, none. You see, if Milne keeps Beatty with him and Beatty's lion with him, then there is nothing going to change. There is the potential that if Milne decides to, even though he's kept the fleet together, the moment he leaves, to tell Beatty to leave Malta as soon as possible, as soon as he can, and to raise up steam and chase, Beatty in Lion can do 27.5 knots. Goben's going roughly 24.5 knots. And there is a small chance he could catch up, especially as it's turbines, so he could try and push things. But the reality is, it's going to be a tail chase. And if you consider the rules they've already established, whereby, and this is the trouble with Milne when you're dealing with him, he's already been ordered not to engage superior forces. This was mainly done with the idea of him ending up fighting the Austro-Hungarians, it's claimed, but it doesn't really matter. In nicest way about, you've given someone like Milne that instruction, do not engage superior forces. You've given him blanket orders, and he passes that on to his juniors immediately. And secondly, he's ordered not to go into the Aegean. He's ordered not to go into the he's not to go into the Adriatic. And he's ordered to be careful about going into the Aegean, is how I understand it. And that's a problem. That is a problem. And then you've got the phrase superior force. Once you have the phrase superior force going around, that is what causes a massive issue. Because let's be honest, Goeben is a superior force to pretty much anything out there. It's faster by half a knot if it's normal, but not usually half a knot, and not normally in this conditions than the Invincibles and Infallibles which are out there. It has a huge amount of capability in terms of its armor versus the Invincibles and the Infallibles. It's got 11-inch guns. It's not bad either, and it's a capable ship. Milne himself is aboard in Flexible. That's what Milne is. He's aboard in Flexible. So he's there himself. He's involved in the chase. He's not being passive. He's chasing around as fast as he can as well. But the thing is, as said, Milne is a commander who's going to follow his instructions from home. He's not going to start taking latitude. So, basically it comes down to, if Milne sends Beatty to chase after them, then they can maybe avoid getting the blame and the problems they can. Because he could say, well, Trowbridge was right to hold back because I had Beatty racing up as fast as he could to get him. And the trouble is, it just didn't work out. That's not the way the cookie crumbled. We tried our best. If he holds Beatty back, then Beatty's probably going to turn his political friends on Milne to secure his position and protect himself. He's going to completely go for him. He's going to do everything he can to destroy him and protect himself and his own career. But there are going to be problems here. Because he's now been in the Mediterranean. He's not been part of the fighting. Because he's been held back. And, well, he could either end up going back to the home fleet and taking out the battlecruiser force. And then things could happen as they did historically. But let's be honest, he's going to look even worse when Doveton Sturdy comes back, because he's going to be the guy who was one of the men who let the Goeben get away, whereas Sturdy just won the Battle of the Falklands. It's going to cause him to worry about his position in charge of the battlecruiser fleet. If he chased them, did manage to do that surge chase and they get away, then that's fine. He comes back and he's going to be considered a hard charger. It should be okay. But the thing is, what happens if he's left in the Mediterranean? Well, if he's left in the Mediterranean, then he's probably given Sackville-Carden's job. That's the most sensible position to put him in. And it basically comes from the idea of Wellington. You know, I can either help you be a hero here or a coward at home. You can either run home and everyone will know forever that you're a coward, or you can be a hero, stay and be a hero in Spain, is what he tells a particularly trenchant colonel, who's of the South Essex, who's particularly useless. And that's pretty much a sensible option. Milne does try and claim that they didn't have full wartime crewing and couldn't develop full speed and man the guns, but honestly, that's kind of stretching it, because what he's including is that, he's got a complement of newly trained new recruits aboard who haven't been brought up to standard, so he hasn't got as many professional sailors as he should. But he's the same as pretty much every other ship in the fleet. In fact, he's done slightly better, because the ships deployed to the Mediterranean, especially his flagship, got some very good personnel sent to them, because they had to be. So there is some truth that he hasn't got necessarily, but he's not in as bad a condition as he tries to make out. And there's lots of various defense which people come to for giving him excuses, but honestly, he's confused by all the different signals going backwards and forwards. I'm going to give that to the man. The man is a follower, not necessarily a. He is a commander, not a leader. He is a follower, not a forger. He won't forge a path, he will follow a path. He will command people while doing it, but he doesn't lead them. And so yeah. Lion can't engage I don't think Lion would catch up to engage alone in this scenario. But the other scenario is that he becomes Sackville-Carden. Now, in which case, he might get to keep Lion, but I doubt it. He probably gets to keep the ships he does historically get to keep, Indomitable, and eventually gets Queen Elizabeth sent out to command him, which he's going to be really happy with. But the thing is, with Beatty in charge of the Dardanelles campaign, there's actually something really interesting here, because the Dardanelles campaign, the first attack we're talking about, not the later ones, the first attack, Sackville-Carden is a good guy. He's a fine officer. But for that sort of operation, you need someone who is belief in their divine anointment. Someone who thirsts for glory. Someone who's going to push his ships through impossible odds. Come hell or high water, keep going. Your only chance to win that operation is to keep going forward. And they come very close. We discussed before, they are incredibly close. There's literally one or two strings of mines between them and Constantinople. And if they push through them, the forts weren't offering much resistance at that point. Yes, the artillery guns are moving around and causing annoyance. But if you'd be able to push through them and clear a path, and Queen Elizabeth alone had got to Constantinople, that would probably been enough to make the Ottoman government fall. So, that then gives us a very interesting problem. Because, honestly, there is a decent chance under that scenario that Beatty wins or dies trying. So he either dies a hero, and he would be immortalised as a hero, and the British would come back and redouble their efforts to try and attack into the whole scenario and trying to attack into Constantinople through the Dardanelles, or he could succeed. Now, I don't know about all of you, but my view is if Beatty had actually pulled off the attack into the Dardanelles, had actually caused the fall of the Ottoman Empire, and taken Constantinople with HMS Queen Elizabeth, he is going to be revered as some sort of naval god. He's going to be a new naval god of war in Britain. The only way Jellicoe will be able to top that is if he wins the Battle of Jutland. Beatty will be quite so big and quite so powerful, there is no doubt he will succeed Jellicoe as commander of the Grand Fleet when Jellicoe does move on from that post. And Beatty will have also had a major impact on the course of the war. The thing is, under that scenario, if Beatty's pulled that off, A, he'll have redeemed himself for Goeben getting away. B, he will be motivated, I swear, in part by a desire for a grudge match with Goeben, which will be a slower Goeben, probably able to do about 23 knots by that point, fighting HMS Queen Elizabeth, which can do roughly 23.5 knots, 24 knots. So, in nicest way, Goeben can't get away, and it's Queen Elizabeth fighting them. There is no chance Goeben wins that fight. And you break into the Black Sea. You are going to have horrendous losses. Okay? Please don't. I'm not saying this will be a success with... No, there will be an incredible butcher's bill. But what I'm saying is Beatty is egotistical enough to compare it to Copenhagen. To Nelson going into Copenhagen the first time, turning his blind eye to the signals and carrying on through the fire to reach the target. That is Beatty's ego we're talking about. And the point is, there is actually a chance it succeeds. There is a decent chance it succeeds. Which we know in hindsight because we know how many lines of mines and things there were there. They didn't know when Sackville-Carden makes the decision he does. He doesn't know what's beyond him. He doesn't know what's there. He's making the best decision he can, the information available. But we know what's there, and we know that Beatty is not Sackville-Carden. He's the guy who wonders what's wrong with his ships when he starts losing them. Not the guy who's going, oh, look at all the people who've just died. That's not his way. It doesn't make him a bad person. It does make him a bit annoying. But that's his way of command. If Beatty took Constantinople, there'll be submarines named after him today. If Beatty took Constantinople, there'd be an aircraft carrier named after him today. He would have one of the plinths in Trafalgar Square. He would have a plinth. The fourth plinth in Trafalgar Square would be Admiral Beatty. Wouldn't be all the things we keep rotating out of. It would be Admiral Beatty sitting in there looking up to Nelson. So, yeah, there's your option. Beatty gets command. Isn't that fun and slightly scary? What are the consequences for the wider war then? If Beatty takes Constantinople, if this happens, I said he either dies trying or achieves, what can Beatty go on to do? Well, Robert Denning, you said, could he become Prime Minister in the timeline? He might do, but he never really wanted to be Prime Minister. He wanted to be Admiralissimo. So, Prime Minister was a step down to what he wanted to be. What the consequences for a wider war are going to be if you open up the Black Sea approach to Russia? Russia might not starve. The scenarios range from you might be able to just about keep the... You might be able to keep the Tsar in power, especially if if Constantinople is secured by the Royal Navy and the first troops to reinforce it are Russian troops who race across on a gangot or something, or one of the dreadnoughts they have in the Black Sea, don't know which, they're smaller ones, and just comes in to reinforce them. If you can do that, if you are giving Constantinople to the Russians, to Tsar, that might be a big enough win for them to sell through the Orthodox Church that you actually give them enough positivity, they can keep going for a little bit longer. Because that's going to right a lot of wrongs in the national mindset. Now, Iron Duke, I've already discussed Trowbridge's armor cruisers versus Goeben and Brussels. I did a video about that a while back. I think that was in some of the videos around time when I was looking at Craddock and the cruiser battles of the Battle of Cornell and the Battle of Falklands. I think that did come up at that point. But yeah, I might do another one at some point. But consequences for the wider war? Well, if the Russians are kept in the war, the Ottomans are kept out of the war, so you don't have the whole Ottoman campaign, you don't have the whole campaign in Israel and Palestine, you don't have the whole campaign in Iraq, etc. You don't have all the operations going on around that area, and you can keep the Russians fighting and keep the Russians supplied. This is not going to extend the war for the Triple Alliance. It's not going to extend the war for the Germans and Austrians. It's going to shorten the war. Because they are going to be in real trouble. If you can keep getting goods in and out of Russia, if you can keep getting supplies going through, if you can Russia such a great victory as Constantinople, then you are going to be dealing with very different Russian forces you're engaging. Now, yes, the government still might change, but whether or not a Red Revolution starts is going to be an entirely different matter. And, of course, with Turkey, with the Ottomans out the war, the Russians also have more troops, but there are more troops generally available. And, yeah, things like Lawrence of Arabia dying a nobody. No, Lawrence probably goes on to achieve some status in other parts. He's a fairly good commander of guerrilla warfare, and also that's another thing you have to think about. The legacy of his guerrilla warfare practices, etc., are a lot of the basis for a lot of the commando operations and some of the raids put together during World War II, and a lot of the stuff that he gets up to forms the basis of how we relate reconnaissance still to this day. So that's experience mess which will have a long-term impact. But basically, the wider war, it changes things. It also changes the necessary commitments in the Mediterranean. It changes. You don't have to have forces sitting in the Eastern Mediterranean waiting for the Goeben and Breslau to come out. You don't. You can free up vessels from other areas to go other places. Even the Japanese forces, which eventually come into the Western Mediterranean, might go elsewhere. So you make it a very different scenario. Armored cruisers in the Med. Yeah. Andrew Cox. Beatty takes Constantinople, destroys the Hagia Sophia in the bombardment. Honestly, there's the question of would he even need to bombard it? Honestly, with the way the Ottoman government is working at this period, if Beatty is out there with a Queen Elizabeth, HMS Queen Elizabeth with 15-inch guns training on them, I think they're going to be fleeing for the hills. I think Constantinople falls in seconds, and the moment Constantinople falls, I think you have an honest falling apart of the government. Well, the thing is, he might make it back. The thing is, he might not make it back in time for Jutland after this. And Black Maximus had just brought this up, and I was going to get into it. The consequences, though, are if he does all this, Beatty probably becomes very busy dealing with operations in the Mediterranean. He might even be made Admiralissimo in charge of all Allied naval forces, both Russian, French, Italian, and British, in the Mediterranean, and be in command there. This means that you have a very different scenario going on over. You either would have Sturdy or Hood in charge of the battlecruisers back in the UK. That's going to have an impact on the Battle of Jutland if it takes place. And when it takes place, and again, you have to remember this is going to have an effect on the course of events in the other parts of Europe. Because if the Germans are feeling that the Russians aren't collapsing, they're going to be more desperate and more likely to do the naval throw of the dice and push the naval throw of the dice to try and get themselves a breakout. And you can't get yourself a breakout with submarines. You have to go surface ships. That's the thing. Submarines are great for denying use of sea, but they're not great for using the sea. You can deny control of the sea with a submarine. You can, to an extent, maintain control of the sea with a submarine. But you can't utilise that control of the sea. You can't reap the benefits of control of the sea with a submarine. That's got to be surface forces. Because the benefits of the control of the sea are being able to move troops, move goods, move supplies, move everything you need across that sea. And deny its use to the enemy. Nicholas, the Tsar Nicholas will probably still find a way to muck it up. But the thing is, you might have the Menchev Revolution, but not the Red October. My scenario, I probably would say, is probably Russia ends up going with the middle of the road Republican Democratic Revolution rather than the communist one. Ignominy. Seymour's just an average lieutenant somewhere else. So basically, and Beatty will come back. He'll probably take over probably take over the ground fleet after Jellicoe because he'll have this wonderful command and this great laurels. And even if Sturdy's been a great second in command of battlecruiser force, that's not going to outweigh Beatty's contribution doing this. And then he will probably go on to becoming First Sea Lord after Jellicoe as well, because again, think of his political capabilities behind him. Those are world class. His ability to go to the parties and do the dinners and do the other important things. So yeah, he's going to be going through that stuff. He's going to be getting into those levels. But here becomes the interesting question of what happens if they split up. Now, traditionally, Trowbridge has defense. He has Black Prince. He has Warrior and Duke of Edinburgh as his ships. And they can all do 23 knots. but have Beatty there with Lion, which can do 27.5 knots. And let's think this through. If your pursuit of the pursuit of the Goeben and Breslau, in terms of when you're engaging them, you make contact with them, and you decide you can't hold contact with them, it's understandable. But Goeben can't dictate the range against Lion. Lion can dictate the range against Goeben, because Lion's faster than Goeben is. Even when Goeben was new, let alone Goeben worn down. And, well, Rob Dunny, he was online in 1914, if I recall. He was wandering around, yes. He was one of his flag officers at certain points. But the thing is, there's less of a scenario for him to muck things up here. In the nicest way, even he can fly. England expects every man to do his duty. Now, in terms of this battle, it's going to be nasty. Again, if we go back to that timeline, it would be 0300 hours on Friday the 7th. It would be the morning of the 7th. They're close. They are before Cape Matapan, but this could end up being another Battle of Cape Matapan. And in its classification, it could be the World War I Battle of Cape Matapan. And the scenario you're probably going to find is Beatty blasting away with his 13.5-inch guns, charging straight at them, ignoring everything else completely, just going straight at them, and Trowbridge organising his cruisers and destroyers and coming up behind. And basically, Goben's going to be left with a scenario, because Goeben can, if it wants to, blast any of those armoured cruisers away. It can win a fight with an armoured cruiser. But if it concentrates its fire on the armoured cruisers, that's going to leave Lion without any attention. So he can either ignore Lion, concentrate on the armoured cruisers, which aren't a threat until they get closer to range, or he can engage Lion at maximum range, which is bad for him and and allow the 9.2-inch gun cruisers to close. Because a lot of discussion rests on whether the 9.2-inch gun cruisers can actually close the sufficient range to penetrate the armour of Goeben, and if they can't, can they do enough damage? And as I think I discussed it before, they could still achieve maybe a mission kill by taking out its superstructure, etc. But what the point is, at this point, Goben's forced into a Sushon and Goeben is forced into a catch-22. And Captain Z. Ackerman is as good as they come, but he ain't gonna figure anything out. They literally have no choice. At this scenario, they end up in a fight. And they're in a fight versus a ship which is designed to kill them, because let's be honest, that's what the Lions were designed to do. They were designed to kill the German battlecruisers. And he's got armor cruisers coming up behind him. And yeah, Goeben will have flash protection issues that's equivalent to the RN, as Michael Kuchar pointed out. She will have the same problems. Actually, it's going to be interesting is that she probably has better flash protection at this point, because Beatty hasn't had months of telling people what matters most is your speed of fire. So, in some regards, the gunnery is actually operating more safely. And this is going to be a dirty fight, but it's going to be a fairly quick fight. Yes, both the German ships have 20-inch torpedoes. No, I don't expect them to have much of an impact. I don't expect anyone to really close within torpedo range. Because, let's be honest, the Breslau, it's capable of 27.5 knots, but it's got 4.1-inch guns. If it's trying to close with the armoured cruisers to try and get and kill them, they've got 8 destroyers with them. Those 8 destroyers will gladly make mincemeat of Breslau. That's what they will do. While the secondaries are the destroyers and the secondaries are the armoured cruisers, and the secondaries of probably Lion also engage. The primaries of all those ships, though, are going to be concentrating on the Goeben. And the thing is, again, the 13.5-inch gun shells can pierce the deck, can pierce the armour, can cause that damage. But the 9.2-inch shells, once they're in range, and the 7.5-inch shells and some of the 6-inch shells, they can rake the superstructure, can rake the deck, can absolutely smash through all the structures which they use for fire control, for the fire direction, all those systems. They can take them out. So that ship will be deluged in a broiling fire, which will literally rip from one end to the other, while it's getting pummeled with 13.5-inch shells. And yes, it'll be firing back hard. I do not expect Lion to escape this unscathed. I expect it to get damaged. But the thing is, the sheer weight of fire is going to be on Lion's side. And the sheer volume of armour coverage is on Lion's side versus the Goeben. And the Lion is a very sturdy ship. You only have to look at the number of hits she takes during Jutland and other battles during World War I and still keeps going. Yes, if there's an unlucky hit, she's in trouble. But you have to remember there's also another scenario here. For Goeben, she doesn't want to hang around fighting because even if she wins, she's going to get damaged enough that Inflexible and Indomitable or Inflexible and Indefatigable will catch her. At 24 knots, she's getting away from them. Even with them doing 25 knots, they're not catching her. But if she's forced to drop down to 18 knots or 15 knots because of damage sustained in this action, she's not getting away from them. So this is the kind of scenario where there is a no-win scenario for the Germans. They charge and fight the British, they're in trouble. But if they don't close range, if they try and keep as far away from the British as possible and let the British dictate range, then it's going to be to the advantage of the 13.5-inch shells on Lion. So in this scenario, Beatty wins. He wins a battle. And this scenario is actually potentially the most interesting, because the consequences for it are many and varied. 99 Andrew. I think the 4 armoured cruisers could have been up Goeben at the cost of 1 or 2 of them. 99 Andrew. The main trouble for them is they can go 23 knots. She can go 25.5 knots. So your problem here is, yeah, they might be able to win that fight, but can they get close enough to actually get in range to win that fight, and are they going to be allowed to get in range to win that fight? So whilst you are perfectly right, they could, that's only if Goeben slows down enough for them to actually fight it. Or if they manage to be positioned perfectly. Basically, Trowbridge was racing as fast as he could to try and get as an intercept point, so they would have to go through him. And then he could do the engagement at dawn. Here he failed to get there fast enough. He couldn't get the triple expansion engines to go, give him the speed to get there fast enough, so he couldn't do it. Now, yes, if the shells aren't doing the damage, there will be a question as to why. And one of the interesting things would be if Goeben surrenders but isn't sunk and is somehow recovered and they're able to study the damage being done by the British shells. That would have a massive impact. But my suspicion is that A, it will be a burning hulk and husk before it goes down, and B, is it will go down. It doesn't really matter how it goes down, but it will go down. But the real question is, what comes for victory from this war? Well, the idea of HMS Queen Elizabeth or any of the Royal Navy's dreadnoughts, whether they're dreadnought style ships, whether they're battle cruisers or battleships, staying in the Mediterranean after Goben's gone is zilch. Not happening. Goben's gone. They'll be off elsewhere. Now, this could have an impact straight away, because remember the Battle of Coronel, which we've already mentioned, takes place in November. At this point, you've had four battlecruisers in the Mediterranean. The odds are Tiger. The odds are Lion and probably Indomitable go back to the home fleet. But I wouldn't be surprised if the other two, Indefatigable and Inflexible, go wandering elsewhere. And when I say wandering elsewhere, that might include going down to the Mediterranean, going down to the Falkland Islands, or at least one of them could end up going down there. One of them could end up going into the Indian Ocean. One of them could end up going down to the Falkland Islands to join Craddock's forces. And that's going to be a reinforcement, because if Craddock has a battle, and if he still has the Battle of Cornell, but this time he's got a battlecruiser with him, doesn't matter if it's an Invincible class or an Indefatigable class, that's going to give him overwhelming firepower versus Von Spey's squadron. Just like Goeben has overwhelming firepower versus the Trowbridge's squadron, the first cruiser squadron, and yes, will sink up on them, but most importantly, can dictate the speed to them, so can keep out of the range of their guns and smash them down. He will be able to do the same if he's got a battlecruiser. He'll be able to take out Sadler. He'll be able to take out Scharnhorst and Gneisenau, and then hunt down the rest of their ships. And the thing is, again, if you do not have Goeben taking your attention in the Mediterranean and Goeben Breslau sitting in Constantinople, then you have no reason to have those units there. And then what's the next order of priority? It's going to be Von Spey's squadron. And if you've already got Queen Mary sitting and being moved to the Caribbean in case they try to go through the Panama Canal, it makes sense to send one of the freed up ships down to the South Atlantic to reinforce them, doesn't it? It's an obvious move. And the other thing is, a victory here is going to give probably Battenberg a little bit of peace, because he's scored a win. He's sunk the Goeben, and he's going to get credit for it. So is Milne. Milne's probably going to get a promotion out of it. So is Trowbridge. Trowbridge might go down to the South Atlantic in the battlecruiser as the Rear Admiral, and Beatty's probably going to get confirmed as the Vice Admiral. At this point, Beatty will be given his promotion to Vice Admiral now. That's going to make him that much higher up the ranks of lists and that much earlier on the promotions. And he's going to deserve it. He's probably going to be recalled straight to the home fleet to command the battlecruisers, the ground fleet to command the battlecruisers. That's where he's going to go. He won't go to the South Atlantic, hunting Von Spey. He might want to, because that's the next source of glory, but he's going to go home. Confirmed as a Vice Admiral, after having had a glorious victory. Now, the other thing it's worthwhile thinking about is how important the arrival of the Goeben and Breslau were to the political situation in the Ottoman Empire, and their decision to go with the Triple Alliance, to go with Germany and Austria-Hungary. Now, the Navy had always leaned British until Churchill decided that, yes, those ships might have been built by public subscription, but I'm going to take them off you for their two ships which were being built in Britain. Not particularly strategically sensible, politically not sensible. And, well, the army was always pro-Germany. The thing is, with this having happened, Russia is still the undoubted naval power in the Black Sea, and the Ottomans are still in trouble, and do they decide to join either side? Do you need to do the Dardanelles, or try and push the Dardanelles, or do anything like that? No, you don't. As long as they're letting trade through, it's fine. And they might well not stop letting trade through. They might keep letting trade through for longer. So the thing is, the Dardanelles, when it happens, if it does happen, Dardanelles campaign, is going to be later in the war. It's not going to happen when it does. It's going to be a year, 18 months, 2 years later. Which means there's going to be supplies going through there, which is roughly 90% of Russia's goods at this point, once you close down the Baltic. Because that is a consequence of World War I, the Baltic is closed. So, with that all happening, with the goods still able to flow through the Dardanelles, Russia keeps going for longer.
Now, yes, they're still worried about the Ottomans, but they're not actively at war with the Ottomans. So things are still tense, so they don't necessarily free up the troops that they have watching the Ottomans, but they have more food and supplies coming through. And the thing I say about having the battle cruiser with him, and this is just to clarify because there's a couple of questions coming in the chat. If Craddock has a battle cruiser with him, it doesn't matter if Von Spey wants to have the fight or not. Von Spey can't outrun that fight. The moment he's caught by a battle cruiser, he's not getting away. Unless he splits up his force into multiple different surface raiders individually going out, in which case that's just great for the British to hunt them down, because the British have a lot more ships to go out hunting than the Germans have ships to go hiding, and a lot more places to store them. So that is a real problem. So I think you end up with a Battle of Cornell, which, if the British are even halfway intelligent, they win because they've been reinforced by at least one battle cruiser. You end up with a Beatty who is absolutely jumping around like he's amazeballs, and you end up with Mediterranean, which is kind of the nudity of British capital ships and large ships. So the other thing is the armoured cruisers, you might find more of them sitting with the Grand Fleet. You might find more of the pre-dreads actually in service supporting operations along the coast, in the Channel, and in those sort of operations. You will probably find a lot more. Also, think about it, all those destroyers and other vessels which are in the Mediterranean possibly don't need to stay in there. The ones which are escorting these ships, or if they are still in the Mediterranean, they're going to be more free to escort merchant ship convoys so they can avoid submarines. So you can run trade through the Mediterranean far more easily. So this frees up a lot of things, and as said, it keeps the Russians supplied and in the war for longer. So if you've got all that going on, if you've got all that scenario happening, what's the effect on the wider war? Well, honestly, it's going to give the British a far greater impression of naval strength and invincibility. It's going to give the British a lot more interesting capability in terms of what they demand for their capabilities, but it's also going to probably push things like the Admiral class battlecruisers to be going on even faster, because the battlecruisers have proved themselves. But interesting enough, it might mean that the battlecruisers get built more like on the Lion Tiger style genre than on the continuation from the Renown class and the renewed battle cruiser line originally. And excuse me, Charles Mora. Clip-on tie, no. Easy to do up tie, yes. And there is a reason for that. I have these ties, as you're going to bring that up. And I have ties like this. It's because I was a trombone player in a big band, and I used to have to change we had a different bow. I had to have a different bow tie for every single set. And we'd go through 5 sets in an evening. And if you've got a trombone and you're trying to change your bow tie mid thing while playing the bow tie, it's far easier to do this one-handed, although I'm currently using 2 because I haven't got the trombone to rest it on, which I normally did, than it is to tie a tie but one-handed. So if you imagine trombone here would be you normally using to hold the tie here while this hand fiddles around, and usually playing a long note while doing it in first position. There was one which I had to play play it in second position, and that was just a nightmare. Ooh. Those were the days, though. So I'm getting used to the bow ties like that. Now, that can be answered in the questions at the end, Robert Dennett. Now, also, the victory would encourage Italy to join the war on the Allied side earlier. Probably not, but it certainly wouldn't work against it. It wouldn't work against that. It would not work against that. And if Gallipoli doesn't happen, again, this is a longer-term consequence, there is an interesting point for what could happen in the Ottoman Empire with its civil war. But the interesting question then comes, what happens to Beatty? Because he's won this glorious battle, and then he comes back, and the rest of the war kind of goes as it traditionally does. He basically has this high point of a battle which plays completely to his strengths, and then he has the rest of the battles of World War I. I think, in the nicest way, history might be kinder to him as a commander because of that. I think he might be, how do I put this? It might be realised that he has skills as a one-on-one ship commander and as a small group commander. He's not good in larger formations. That's not his leadership level or his skills and leadership, because he is good at the higher political command as First Sea Lord. So it's realistically a problem for Beatty, but honestly, it's not that big a problem. He will go on to success in other ways. He will go on to still show himself off as best his political abilities allow him, and he will end up with a lot more medals. He will probably get even more medals from the French and the British over this win. He'll probably get medals from everyone the British can con into giving him medals on it. And yeah. But remember, in this scenario, there is no fight for Constantinople because there's probably no Dardanelles because there is no Goeben and Breslau there. And if later on the Ottomans do join World War I on the side of the Germans and the Austrians later in the war, then there's going to need to be a force sent out. Now, Beatty might be sent out to command that. He might be sent out to command it, but the force he's going to turn up with is going to be very different than the one historically sent, because it's not going to be a rush put together force in 1915. It's going to be a force post Jutland, because I cannot imagine by the time the Ottomans actually make a decision, it's going to be before Jutland. And basically, if Jutland had been as historically was, indecisive battle, thanks in large part to Beatty, there is this scenario where you send Beatty back to the Mediterranean to command that force because, you know, that's a prominent enough position, but it gets rid of him. And Jellicoe gets promoted to First Sea Lord, and you have a completely new team in charge of the battlecruiser fleet and the Grand Fleet. And that is an option. That is a real option in that scenario. Iron Duke, don't wind up Nightbot. Oh, I really should not find it funny when Nightbot actually gets active. Nightbot is very useful for so many things, but Nightbot sometimes doesn't. Yeah. Run on. Iron Duke, stop winding up Nightbot. Run on. Don't pick on Nightbot. It can't help it. It's not a human. There is a chance that he's sent to command the fleet, especially as it's his area of experience. Yeah, and that is likely what happened. He gets sent to command. You can make that case, and if he again wins or does again, it's going to depend on what happens. Because if the Ottoman defences in the Dardanelles have managed to erode even more in the time frame, Andrew, I know Dr. Prof. Lambert's my old PhD supervisor. He's still one of my friends. Actually, I owe him an email. Dad, thanks for reminding me. But yeah, so yeah, I am an admirer of him. But it's basically to stop people spam. The Nightbot's set up to stop people spamming links to other channels and other videos in people's systems. And basically, it does it to stop the spam bots. So yeah, it just has it as rules. Admins can put in links to things, but regular viewers can't. Mainly because of spam bots. And this is one of those things. Again, it's because of spam bots and because of the ones which come and try and push porn sites that we have to have these rules in place. And it then means that everyone's treated the same because you can't have it. It can't detect the difference between spam bots and regular people because, well, some of you have names like 99 Iron Duke, and I can't have it programmed in to go, well, it's recognize a regular name. And even then, let's be honest, some of the bots which are trying to spread spam try and pretend they're regular names. It's just terrible. So BT probably does well in this. He probably still goes on the first Sea Lord. He's going to have a lot of political luster. And if he does get the Mediterranean Command against Gallipoli, Dardanelles, that sort of thing, then that could be a problem. It's going to depend on how he gets it, but he could. It's also, if you consider his experience in Egypt and in other operations in the past, he actually has experience with these kinds of operations. Okay, it's not the best option. I've been over in the past who the best option for amphibious warfare is in this period. But yeah, it's a problem because he could do quite well, and that could help him go on to first Sea Lord and Luster. But it's those political connections. They are going to insulate him from a lot of problems. But again, if they manage to muck up a later Gallipoli, if the Ottomans have actually invested in their defences rather than let the Dardanelles defences erode away even more, and then he has the chance of actually ruining his career. But it's going to take a lot. Iron Duke, just put it in a comment below. Don't put it in the chat. That's always my advice. If you want to share a link, just stick it in the comments below. Don't stick in the chat. The chat has these protections because of the spam bots, and because of the way the spam bots work. The comment protection system is different, and it will usually let through YouTube links. It's links to other websites and outside URLs that it really does block. But there is a third option. There is a third option, and this is an interesting one which I thought I would include, because here is the thing. With Beatty there, with Beatty and his fleet there, and Lion there, do they try and run for Constantinople, or do they try and run into the Adriatic? Thank you, Steve. It wasn't thinking it was a copy-paste of the title. Yeah. But for some reason, Nightbot, according to notes I received... Oh, it doesn't like it was the caps, not the lights. Not the thing. I have... Did it block him out for 5 seconds or something like that? Yeah, he was timed out for 5 seconds. I think there is some sort of caps limitation again. Again, it's for the spamming people who put all those lovely things in caps, which I'm not going to say. So, go back to the beginning. He's told by Kaiser Wilhelm to break out for the Mediterranean and to break out through Gibraltar and go to the Atlantic and try and get home. Von Pol and Turbot's tell him to go to Constantinople. But if he knows, and he probably will do, because they have fairly good intelligence, it's fairly easy to hear when these big ships enter the Mediterranean, etc., that Lion's in the water, and Lion can, of course, chase him. I think it becomes very tempting to go for the Adriatic. I think it becomes very tempting for him to go for the Austro-Hungarian Empire. I will take that calming aspect, but it's not going for that yet. That's going to be that will be in the Historiathon. And joining the Kaiserlich und Kaiserlich Kriegsmarine, well, that's actually an impact, because you see, if Goeben arrives to supplement Tegnos, A, she's going to be pretty much the fastest dreadnought in the Adriatic by a long margin. B, she's she's more than powerful enough to take on the pre-dreadnoughts of the Regia Marina. She's going to therefore give them 10v10 in capital ship terms, and she could do, if you consider the raids the Germans did against Hartlepool and Scarborough, then... Hello, Nicholas Burrows. Oh, yeah. Hope you enjoy it. Imagine those being carried out against Venice, or Ravenna, or Ancona, or Pescara, or Bari, or Brindisi. Imagine what could be carried out. But it would cause the Italians to join the war earlier. It would cause the Italians to join the war against the Germans earlier and the Austrians, because let's be honest, the moment this reaches Austro-Hungary, the Italians are going on red alert. Now again, this does two things. It actually makes it even less likely, to my mind, of the Ottomans joining the war on the German and Austro-Hungarian side, because let's be honest, if you now got the Italians, the Russians, the British and the French all fighting that partnership, and possibly the Greeks joining in as well, because they don't want to be outdone by the Italians and they want to be on the side as their Orthodox brothers and on the side of the British, for the Ottomans joining that party to fight against that sounds like a good way to end up losing a lot of territory. So that's going to have an impact on the war. It's also going to be early enough that who knows what managed to get in the Straits of Otranto, who knows what managed to get erected across there. But think about it from a British commitment perspective. If the Goeben is in the Adriatic, she ain't breaking out. The French and Italians can seal that up. They can at least be relied on to do that. So again, the British don't need to have those commitment of forces in the Mediterranean. Yes, they failed to capture it, but instead of it causing them more problems, it's kind of sealed itself off in the Adriatic. And yes, it's a bit embarrassing it got away, but that's life. That's life. They didn't want to start a war with the Austro-Hungarians at that point, and so they didn't go into the Adriatic. And the thing is, it still frees up their battlecruisers. It frees up their ships, so you can still get the Battle of Coronel with British battlecruisers presence, and you can still get all those other scenarios. And so, basically, under that scenario, Beatty returns home to the Grand Fleet, and nothing particularly changes. Milne and Trowbridge don't have to deal with being, how do I put this, eviscerated by court-martial, because, again, there is a difference between escaping to another power to join in the war and escaping to the Austrians. If you escape to the Austrians, you bring the Italians into the war on your side, it's beneficial. It's almost a case of, let me put it more simply. If it had happened, there would be, whilst I would still believe it was probably by mistake, not design, there would be half part of me which would go, if they'd let the Goeben get to the Austrians, that brings the Italians into war on your side, as we are all pretty sure it would do, there'll be half me willing to believe the conspiracy theories. It will make things complicated enough for the Germans and the Austrians that, frankly, yeah, I don't think, how do I put this politely, that that it would necessarily work out well for the other side, but it would be useful enough for the Royal Navy that I could that sort of cynical part of me would say that if there were other officers who came from the Naval Intelligence Branch of the Royal Navy in charge of the operations, I would be wondering if they'd let them get their fruit out on purpose. We're talking about a different batch of officers than the ones who were actually in charge. And yes, they would have a fast capital unit. They can do something interesting to Straits of Otranto, but also there's the fact that Goban doesn't want to have a fight with any of the dreadnoughts. And so she's one unit. So basically what you would get is the Italians and French having to concentrate their better dreadnoughts sitting at the Straits of Otranto. They would have to be probably sitting in Brindisi. And probably Taranto and Brindisi. Brindisi would be the forward operating base, and Taranto would be where they go for refits and repairs. And that would have to be it. To block off that. And they might even have to bring them higher, because again, if the Austro-Hungarians are doing raiding with her against the Italian coast, then they're going to have to cover it. But the thing is, it won't be the Royal Navy's problem. It will not be the Royal Navy's problem. Maybe later in the war it becomes the Royal Navy's problem. But U-boats and offensive mine laying, probably submarines and offensive mine laying will probably be the key issue. Greetings from Florida with no grid or internet. Oh, Melanie. That scares me. That's why I am basically leading a one-man campaign. My mum's on board for it. That whatever happens, whatever we can afford and can't afford from the move, because we keep finding other costs here, and it looks like we could have a bill for the roof for 20 grand. We're going to put in solar panels and batteries, because then we don't have to worry about the grid. We'll have enough battery power that'll keep us going for a couple of days. Basically, the idea is have at least 2 to 3 batteries and have at least 18 panels, as that should be more than enough. Because that scares me. Now, well, this does create some issues. Did you get it inspected before buying? Yes, it was inspected. But there are some interesting issues come up with it since we have bought it. And it turns out some of the things which were supposed to be something else, something because of the instructions weren't. But no. If it joins it, it's an interesting thing. It's another interesting option. And so that leads us to the summary. And then I will go to Discord and I will go through all your questions as well. It's an interesting thing in history to start thinking about scenarios where officers who normally are rated pretty badly, what they would do if they were in a situation which actually suited them. It's a really interesting system and a really interesting piece of history when we start to consider through that officers tend to, commanders, and when you're husbanding your resources, one of the things you tend to be trying to do is pick the right person for the right command. And that's a tough one sometimes. You see, you can think that someone is perfect because they have aggression, they have personality, they have skills. You can think that's an independent thinker, that's someone who's going to do what I need them to do. But those same things can mean they forget to do things. It's like, one of the things we often talked about on this channel is that what happens if Beatty has Somerville, who is a trained communications officer, as his flag officer rather than Seymour, and Somerville was the option rather than Seymour. And he actually chooses Seymour. Well, Somerville will do a lot of the things which Beatty forgets to do himself. He'll automatically be sending updates to the Grand Fleet, or rather broadcasting updates when he's in contact with the Germans, because the Germans already know where he is, so he will automatically be sending out the information required without Beatty having to tell him. He won't make mistakes about the flags because he's a trained communications officer and signals officer, whereas Seymour wasn't. So this is a case of, when you're picking a commander, you need to then pick their staff around them to balance out their personality. You're making a command team. Yes, this person's going to be the decision maker, so it's probably going to have this ethos and this action, and these are what they like to select. But if I pick someone who's aggressive and hard charging, I need to have someone who's methodical for the planning work. I need to have someone who is a natural communicator who's going to think about the communications even when the other person isn't. You need to almost balance these teams out. And you need to put that team together for the right situation for them. And the interesting thing is, when you look at Beatty's team, when you look at Chatfield, when you look at his officers around him, when you look at him and his ship, they are the right team for this situation. They're the right commander, the right person for this situation. And that's freaky to say. For someone like me who spends half his life talking about Beatty, and it's not always that pleasant or not always that polite, because Beatty, as good as he is in some ways, is absolutely terrible at the communication with the senior officers, at the telling other people what he's going to do, at the coordination with other forces. He's not good at those things. And the trouble is, he doesn't pick a team which balances out his weaknesses, because he doesn't acknowledge his weaknesses. And again, you have people like that. This is one of the things I do sometimes do. I do a nice line in talks at management seminars. And I do a lot of stuff about team selection and team organization. And I always start off with, your first thing you have to do with team selection and organization is look at yourself. And you have to do an honest appraisal of yourself. What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? And are they strengths and weaknesses? Are they weaknesses which you can overcome with training, with education, with thought and dedication and thinking it through before you do it? Or are they weaknesses you can best overcome by getting in someone who has those, who instead is strong in that area, and who you listen to on that? And you make a conscious effort to listen to when they are telling you advice on that, because they are strong in that area and you are not. And that's often a tough point to get across. And I've had people come back to me after the seminars, and they've sort of go, well, I didn't know why a historian was including this. I was expecting people with business experience and all this sort of stuff. And you go, well, it's because we all offer our own different perspectives on leadership and management and these skills. And they've come back to me. It's usually at another seminar later when I've done a second one. And I've done a few of them over the years, different companies asking me to do them. And this was actually a completely different company that had organised that seminar, invited me along to talk. And someone came up to me, I think his name was James. I think it was James. I hope he's not watching, because I've forgotten his surname completely. I do apologise. But it was a long time ago. We're talking about 5 years ago, and our first meeting was about 10 years. It was about 5 years before that. And he came up to me. It was 2019, and he said, "Yeah, you were right." I went, "What was I right about?" Because, well, it happens, but I don't always know what I'm right about. It's rare enough that I take notice of it. His point was, he said, "You were right. I picked my team of people I liked, who I thought were nice people, who I thought were fun people, and going to be fun to work with. That team ended up having problems because we were all alike and we all had similar weaknesses. And it was only when I did an appraisal and worked out of myself what my weaknesses were, and then looked at the team, that I realised that we couldn't compensate for each other's weaknesses because we all had similar weaknesses. I went, okay. Then I asked him what he did about that, and he said, I didn't want to fire them because of my friends, so I hired some more people. It was tight for a while, but we managed to make it. Not sure if that was necessarily the right decision to keep lots of people who are the same in your command team, but maybe it worked. Worked for him. The company was still going. The odds are might have been more sensible to get rid of at least one of the people who are thinking the same, the least useful of them, and then hire people. But, you know, we all have our own personalities, and perhaps one of the problems he had, and I was going to guess that, was he had difficulty firing people or saying no to people. And he needed someone to come and say no for him. Beatty line, there is always the chance that Beatty loses line. There is always the chance that, you know, the Gerben gets a lucky hit and then smashes up that and does that. But yes, and even if there are and then sinks Gerben, it's a loss. You're quite right, Andrew Cox. But the thing is, the likelihood of that happening is quite small. And as said, this is one area where Beatty's actually quite good at individual ship tactics and individual ship command. He's actually quite good at that sort of scenario. My coach, no, that's not going to... There are going to be enough examples of that without me making a series for that next year. Next year, I've already worked out the series for next year, so that's not happening. I know the series for next year. There's going to be the Key Leaders series. There's going to be Strategic Command, Tactical Command, and Tactical Command and Unit Command are the three main themes going in. And Great Decision and Key Decision. I'm still deciding what it's going to be, but it's either going to be Great Decisions or Key Decisions or Critical Decisions of Leadership. That's going to be the 4 series around the whole year. Yes, and diversity of thought is also the hardest to get actually into an organisation, Rinon. And I'm talking true diversity of thought, because sometimes people, you have to... A diversity of thought doesn't necessarily come from diversity of background, believe it or not. It can do. That can be an easy way to get it, but it doesn't always necessarily equate to that. It's fun times. Sometimes you have to be quite... to get true diversity of thought and approach situations, it's quite fun. Yeah, firing least useful... Michael Cooch, firing least useful is problematic because your idea of least useful may not be accurate. Well, A, he's the boss, so I hope he would know who was least useful to his organisation and have at least some metrics of working it out. And B, at a certain point, if all of them have the same strengths and weaknesses, it doesn't really matter who you fire, does it? Because they're all bringing pretty much the same thing to the table. Sadly enough, it doesn't. So, let's open up the Discord questions. Key release, key release, key release, key release, key release. Well, I've got a few here. Black Maximus. With Lion being pulled into Mediterranean, will additional crews and escorts be sent along with her? Probably not. They don't really need it. They need her, they don't need anything really else. As we went back to this, once you realise that the other ships involved, and once we go back to all the way back to this one, in the Mediterranean, are all 25 knot ships. Reinforcing them with Lion makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense to support it. With Beatty and Med, who gets the Grand Pacific Fleet battlecruisers? Hood? Probably not. There are a couple of options wandering around, but Hood's off command. Hood's off at this point, and it will be quite quickly put in charge of ships in the in the Channel area. I think probably what you find is the squadrons get left as the squadrons. The battlecruisers aren't really a separate force as we would understand at this point. Beatty being there makes them a separate force, and he's the one who tries to treat them as a separate force. But they have their own squadron commanders. They have senior officers there. Him being on detached duty, he's only an acting vice admiral at this point. I don't know what habit you're talking about, Runar. I like to have a bunch of questions in front of me. It's nice. Waitress for done. If HMS Queen Elizabeth is in the list, I'm assuming they might send her with the battlecruisers for a while if Tiger's going away. It's Lion going away, and not really, but she's in the list because she's part of the reinforcements for the ground fleet to make sure that no one's turning there, no one is achieving enough speed over them to actually do a decisive impact. And let's be honest, if you're trying to do a T, and you find HMS Queen Elizabeth and HMS Tiger and Queen Mary and Princess Royal perhaps together blocking you, then the Germans aren't winning that fight. Add in New Zealand and Invincible and Australia, and they're really not winning that fight. Stafford, if BT lives longer, how many more battlecruisers would he force the Admiralty to construct? 2 full-class upgrade renowns and admirals? He doesn't really force them to construct anyway. Look at him. When he's first Sea Lord, they construct. He's the one. There's a large number of the Navy pushing for the F3 design because it's the fastest design. He's the one who pushes them to be Nelson and Rodney as the battleship design. So there's a real scenario where we could have ended up with a fast battleship / battle cruiser design of the F3s, and he's the one who pushes them down to the Nelrods. I think your hypothetical's in this list, Robert Dennett, so hopefully we'll get into that. I think it's in that list. I think that's the hypothetical you're talking about. Runon will check. As they are currently telling me off about my question habits, they can go check that. Lama Maximus, how close on a scale of 1 to 10 for battlecruisers, one word, are the German battlecruisers to being fast battleships? They are very much still battle cruisers at this point, but they are getting closer. They are getting closer to fast battleships. So I would say the Flingers definitely are still battle cruiser one words, but I would say once you get beyond them, you're looking at things which are increasingly looking like fast battleships. If we consider the Flinger, Seydlitz has a top speed of 28 knots, and I think she's the fastest German battlecruiser ever produced. Moltke and Goeben are technically supposed to be the same 28 knot ships, and 27.75 knots for Von der Tann, but she can't really do that at that point. Her design speed of 25.5 knots is usually what comes in, and 28 knots for Goeben is often something which doesn't happen. So she's listed as being a 28 knot ship, but she's not a 28. She's designed for 25.5 knots, and she's often not achieving that speed. Seydlitz was pretty much the only one which was actually 28 knots. The Flingers are 26.5 knot ships roughly. The Mackinsons are supposed to be 28-knot ships, but they're also designed to have Parsons steam turbines to do that, and they are the best that Parsons can provide. And as you can guess, it's unlikely they're going to get Parsons. It's kind of like the Erzat Yorks are unlikely to get Parsons designed steam turbines. And so, yeah, that they are getting slower, they're getting more heavily armoured, they're moving more towards the fast battleship genre of that period as time goes on. Let's see. Just putting this into discourse in case I missed the next cruise ships. What would happen if the Rivadarias delivered a year earlier and Argentina attacked the Falklands alongside von Spey's squadron? Argentina would economically cease to exist very shortly after that. They would probably win the fight against the... Well, hang on, they wouldn't probably be able to catch the battlecruisers, but the battlecruisers would be able to dodge the fight. Canopus would probably would either cause damage from inside the Falklands, or they'd have to go in to go kill her. And the trouble is what would turn up next. Because the Argentine economy would be going down the sink because how much of its trade goes through British merchant hulls at that point, and how much of its trade is with Britain at that point. And potentially Brazil and Chile use that as an excuse to declare war on Argentina with the backing of Britain. So Argentina and Uruguay would probably join them in that as well. So Argentina could end up in massive trouble very quickly. It's not a good scenario, and in that period, it's one of those things, the Falklands-Malvinas issue, as I usually call it, but it's the Falkland Islands and claim of ownership over the Falkland Islands, is something which becomes more of an issue post-World War II, with the dictatorships which emerge post-World War II, than pre-World War II, and certainly during World War I era. There's a difference in their approach. No, there's no point adding... Dan Freeman, there's no point adding in another complication and discussion about the deviation of going fast battleships or fast dreadnoughts. It's just... That's just going to confuse people more, and it makes it sound even more specialist off from one corner. Right on. If Beatty does force the Dardanelles with battleships, does the Royal Navy ever agree to a treaty on battleships? That's an interesting question. If they do, it's going to be a case of if they've done it and it's been done, it's going to change a lot of history. It's also going to make older battleships have a use, because older battleships now have a proven use of being used to force things like straits. So it might well cause more trouble to Washington treaties. There's a lot of scenarios in this which cause more trouble to Washington treaties. Pretty much the major problem with this and the Washington treaties is if the British have been more successful in using these ships around the world. It's not just been the Battle of the Falklands, but also been the Scoben vs. Breslau, Battle of Cape Matapan, and Battle of Coronel, but of course no Battle of the Falklands. The British are going to want that round-the-world presence even more, and that could have pushed the Admiral class earlier. And also, as I've said before, the Admiral class, if they are designed from the get-go as battle cruisers, as in the next generation after Tiger, rather than continuations from where Renowns have started off again, thanks to Jackie Fisher, then if they are a 15-inch super version of Tiger, rather than a 8-gun version of the Renowns upgraded for the next generation armor in their original design, there is a big difference in them. Okay? There is a big difference. And that also makes them a lot quicker in terms of their development into fast battleships, because you can move from battle cruiser to battle cruiser in the design development. You can move from battle cruiser to fast battleship in the design development stages you're building it. You can move from fast battleship to battleship in design development, and vice versa. You can move one step. You can't move two, because the ship's hull and framing won't support that move. Because you're close enough, if you're in one of them, to move one, you can do it. You can't move two. So then we have Robert Dennett's question. What if the heavy cruiser, Exeter, light cruiser Achilles, and light cruiser Ajax went for a night of storm and found themselves just behind Goeben on August the 7th? If it was on August the 7th, it would depend what time of day it was. Because if it's at night time, they have radar, and Goeben is getting sunk. That is literally it. At that time, if they come through on the 7th, if they find themselves there at the same time as the 1st Cruiser Squadron, then with the range of their guns and their radar, at that time, at sort of 0300 hours to 0400 hours in the morning, Goeben is getting sunk. Literally, she is going to be pummeled with shells in the dark when she can't do much or anything against them. Her night fighting is certainly not up to combating ships armed with radar. And then, well, after that, they're probably, once they've put enough guns to wreck her superstructure and command structure, they probably try and get in close for torpedoes, and their torpedoes will sink her. And they've got the speed to be able to do that. And nice way, Breslau will be knocked out in within 5 minutes. Either Achilles or Ajax will get the job of, there's Breslau! Oh, goody! Bang, 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 6-inch shells. Breslau. It just won't even be pretty. So Breslau will be out of the engagement straight away, and then it's just Goeben. And they'll just, as I said, wreck her and then go in for the kills. I like my Q release button. Oh, that's so much fun. Lions, how much input does an admiral get into who is part of their command staff? They used to get a lot more. Now they get given an option of you can have this officer, or this officer. Choose. So basically, it used to be a case of they could pick from any available officer. Now they get a, here are these officers. Choose. And the thing is, they can always bring their old staff with them, officers from their old staff with them. That's usually fine. But it's getting, in terms of if they need to fill a position, they're going to get a limited amount of choice, but not a maximum amount of choice. And the officers get a bit of a choice as well, because if the officer doesn't want a staff position, they can go, no thank you. It's not good for their careers to say no, but if they've got a reason, they can do it. Dan, why are you typing that in? Blackburn Maximus. How does this scenario change if from the Lion class battlecruiser onwards, the Royal Navy have 2 battlecruisers built for every class of battleships? Well, then they build 2 Tigers and 2 Renowns. It doesn't really change anything. There's 2 Tigers coming in. 2 Queen Marys as well. Well, it might mean there's an extra Queen Mary available to go into Mediterranean instead, and it'll mean there's an extra Tiger coming along. But that's about it. It gives you 2 extra battle cruisers because they built 2 Lions. So it doesn't really change much other than there's another Queen Mary class pottling around and another Tiger in construction about to come into service. Dan Freeman, should we differentiate the fast battleships of World War I from those of World War II by calling them fast dreadnoughts? No, because it just gets more and more picky for people to try and work out and going, why do we call this and this? And because some of the faster ships in World War II are actually fast ships from World War One, so it's just too nutty to try and get into it. Runon, stop taking your debates with the bot into the Discord server. It confuses me. Blackburn Maximus. Clarification of Washington Treaty. Could the French and or Italians have built carriers from the keel up after signing, or does the capital construction halt on it? It doesn't stop that. They could build them from the keel up, yes. So could everyone else. Everyone was able to build carriers from the keel up. They just didn't. They just did conversions. Then a few of them start getting into that, but they take their while. They do the conversions first. They're learning their skills. The British have built some from the keel up by that point. They completed Hermes. They complete Hermes. I have no idea how I posted that profile picture of Dan Freeman. I had no idea Dan Freeman has that kind of profile picture. Dan, you might want to check your profile picture because it's coming through as a picture of... Let's put it this way. Someone tied up. Just going to leave it as that. So there's Dan's normal image in the chat. And there's Dan's normal image on Discord, and there's a whole new image come on the Dan Freeman question in the app. Ask Discord. Yeah. Rob Dennett. Would have Beatty made a decent Age of Sail captain, say around Nelson's time? Yeah, he made a fine Age of Sail captain in Nelson's time. Because you have more time. One of the troubles for Beatty, and one of the troubles for a lot of modern warfare, is that you get less and less time to make these things. This is why you need the staff. An interesting argument I've had recently with someone was they were going, staff today is so bloated, that's what causes the complications. And I go, well no, staff is bloated, has increased in size because of the pace of war. And they looked at me weird. I went, why? I went, well, think about it. It used to be that you could give a staff officer a huge list of things, and they would have time to go and do them. Now they might have time. They might have time to do one thing before the enemy does something else, and something else happens, and you have to give them a new instruction, and have to change what they're going to do. So if you need those things done more quickly, you need more people to ensure they're being done. And that's why when you start to look at most modern command staffs, they're pyramids. That's what Dan looks like. I have met Dan in person. That's not what he looks like. I'm trying to remember what he looked like last Halloween. No, that's not what he looks like. But that's the problem with the command staffs. They become like sort of these. They've had to become, instead of these sort of circular structures where you have the commander in the middle and you have a staff around them. They also become like a pyramid structure, going off in multiple branches, or a tree structure where you have like these 5 officers around him, and then they have each of them has about another 4 officers around them, and another 4 officers around them, and it goes out because that's how it has to work to deal with all the things that are going on. So yes, you can give this officer a list, but then they break their list down to give it to their subordinates, and then they bring that list down to their subordinates, and it might get done in time. And it's nutty. Considering the speed of the Austro-Hungarians' Royal Sovereign-style battleships, i.e. the pre-dreadnoughts, the Habsburgs 80 knots, the Herzogs 20.5, Radetzky's 25, can they be considered fast Royal Sovereign battleships? No. No, we're not doing this. They're just Royal Sovereigns, built for the Adriatic. I'm not getting into that discussion. That's definitely a Bilgepunt discussion about this New Zealand ship, but from all I've heard about the captain in question, they are a very good officer who started off their career in the Royal Navy, and there is... I think it'll be interesting to see what the results of the inquiry will be, but I am willing to lay a little bit of, not money, but certainly emphasis on the idea. I don't think it's going to be attributed to them. Not because of any sort of people trying to cover up or things like that, but because from what I've heard about them, they are very good, and they are very hardworking and a very diligent commanding officer who have served for a long time. Could we have a Super Royal Sovereign type battleship? Theoretically, you could have done. Theoretically. But the trouble is that usually... the trouble is going to be building up to that scale. And one of the things that comes about with Dreadnought is also, as well, the turbines and all these things, is also some developments in understanding of ship architecture and how to construct ships, especially keels and double keels, etc., to be able to build that longer hulled ship. And so grow the ship in size. So that's one of the reasons why the Dreadnought comes about when the Dreadnought comes about, because that is the suitable time for the Dreadnought to come about. Later on, Dr. Clarke talks about subordinates reminds me of Red Storm Rising. The 4-star shouts at the divisional commander, who goes at his brigade, and about half an hour later the sergeants are doing the shouting. Yeah, that is pretty much it, but that's the way it goes. So that's how you get the forces moving, how you get the officers down to it. No, they are often made examples of, even if they're not worth it, if they are not at fault. But there is some seriously interesting issues going on there, and there are other issues at play in the Royal New Zealand Navy, which is why I'm not going to be discussing it outside of the idea of Bill Trump. So I'd be happy if you stopped bringing it up about now, because it's not something I really want to discuss outside of Bill Trump, because I might be tempted to answer questions which I shouldn't do. Is it true that Red Storm Rising is based on a game? Harpoon, yes. That Harpoon is to an extent based on Red Storm Rising, and Red Storm Rising is based on, to an extent, the wargaming, but also on Harpoon, the sort of, what was it? Was it that kind of the game? Yeah, it was based on I think the Harpoon board game. Yeah. And then the computer game is more based on actually Red Storm Rising than it is based on the actual game. And that's, by the way, please note, that's not to shut down discussion. It's just there are things I've heard, and Tom Sharp has written a really excellent article about it. There are a lot of interesting things going around about this situation. So, yeah. So, with all that said, there are some sort of questions coming. Would the Battle of Jutland be better told as a movie or a miniseries? I would say probably as a miniseries. You could get into all the details coming in before it, and all the stuff coming in before it, and you could have, if you think about it, Season 1 could be prior to World War I, leading up to pretty much Dogger Bank, and then Season 2 is leading up from Dogger Bank to Jutland, and then Season 3 is after Jutland. Right on. Dan, have a look in the Brew Ship's Q&A questions. Because, yeah. Actually. It just reveals how many questions I think messages I got to respond to a moment from people. I really got to do a better job of responding. Yeah, Dan, I don't think this is you. For starters, they have a lollipop in their mouth. I don't think I've ever seen you having a lollipop. Right then. With that all said, I hope you've enjoyed. I'm going to I'm going to go change out these trousers, make sure I'm in comfy tracky bottoms, and hang these trousers up nicely. But yeah, I'll pop into Discord and be chatting away, answering questions on there as well in a bit. And yeah, you should also find me on Twitch tomorrow evening. There are going to be some various videos starting up soon. There's going to be the shorts, hopefully starting next week. There's going to be all the videos recorded for next week. On Saturday will be Scuttlebutt 6 coming out. And yeah, that should be fun. That's going to be a recorded video. That's not going to be a premiere. Brew Ships is Sunday. That should be programmed in to go there. There should also be the results of November's patron vote to go up. And yeah, the videos for next week will all be recorded before next week, because I go up Wednesday, go home Wednesday, I'm at, sorting things out, and then on Thursday I'm at the dinner up in London. Friday I come back down. And yeah, so I will see you all live again on Sunday, but I will see you then the following Sunday after that. And let's just check there's no more questions left in here. Yeah, Dan, you've come back to normal now, so I have no idea where that strange version of you came from. Questions closed. Thank you very much, Aaron. Take care. We've also got coming up, if we go back to the front here, we'll see it. Next week we have Canals No More. How does the effect of either the Kiel, Suez or Panama Canal not being built affect world events? That's going to be on the Thursday as the premiere. Then it's going to be Heligoland, Fortress Heligoland. That's going to be on a Thursday as a live. And I've decided to make Tiger Cubs because so many people are interested in asking about it. That's going to be a live as well. Thank you very much, Steve Clarke. Going to have to set up a system which totalizes things. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care, and thank you, my coach, Melanie1640, Paul Amos, Blackburn Maximus, Steve Clarke, Atros Verdun, DG40, Runon, and Leslie, and Dan, of course, for all chatting away and being admins this evening. All the admins this evening have been really helpful. Thank you. 999 Duke, 96831, Raptor John Shea, Mark Harkness, Derp Squad, thank you. Thank you, Robert Dennett, for all the super chats and all the interesting ideas. And thank you, everyone who's been involved. And thank you, everyone who's a patron at the moment. As I said, the patron vote is still live. And I think it's worthwhile considering before I go, quickly checking the patron vote to tell you what the current results are. Let's see. Current results. We have who's in the lead, and who's second, and who's third, and who's fourth, because this now has bearing. This is the point. This is the point I've made. It's been really interesting to me actually to expand it to say there's going to be premieres as well as lives and non-patrols, because it does expand things. There's people potting away at chatting, sending me pictures of things on the community section. I'm going to enjoy reading through that. Yeah. It's fun. It's fun. Okay, so let's get that up and get that working. And have a look at this. So we have currently joint in the lead on 14. 3 of them are Carl Hanshaw's Italy Stays Neutral in World War II. Leslie Mitchell's Alternate History, What If Japan Pulls Out of China in August 1941. And Richard Vasava's The Kido Butai spotted 3 days away from their Pearl Harbor attack. They're all on 14. On 13, currently sitting in... no, there's no one on 14. Michael 66, World War I in the English Channel. What happened? All 4 of the leaders are currently on 14, but sitting on 13 is Robert Locke's Convoy Warfare in 1980 and Beyond, What Are the Challenges of Trade Protection? And there are even ones down on 11 and 10. Which is really interesting me. By the way, that's 210 votes cast in total. But there are still, and this could really shift it, there are still 10 patrons who haven't voted at all, according to what I'm receiving. So if you haven't voted as a patron before Sunday, you could change things completely. And it's not even counting me at this point. Take care, everyone. Hope you enjoyed. And Lions and Inns Morris and everyone else who's been watching, thank you. And who am I missing? I'm missing some people. Andrew Cox, thank you. I said thank you to Runon, haven't I? Richard Gross, hello, thank you. Black Maximus, thank you. Nightbot, of course, I should always say thank you to Nightbot for trying your best, very willingly, not always accurately, but trying your best. Bone Meal Boy, thank you. And Fun Police, thank you. And everyone else who's been here today, thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and take care. Toodles.